Welcome everyone and good afternoon. My name is Damien O'Sullivan and I am a nutritionist here to speak with you all today on behalf of Laya Healthcare and Laya Wellness as part of the Laya Wellness live events. Before I jump into anything else today, I'd just like to remind you all to keep an eye out for more of these events to come over the following few weeks. There's some fantastic content ready to roll out with some fantastic speakers. So be sure to keep an eye on more of them to come. So today we're here to speak about using this time to optimize your diet. I suppose now more than ever we find ourselves in an unusual situation where our normal life and our normal routines and situations are still out of whack. So today we're going to speak about some of the topics and some of the knowledge and information that you may benefit from to enhance your diet or to help you make some changes to your lifestyle overall. It is worth remembering that you are all going to be in different situations, different starting points with different goals. So be sure to focus in on you and yourself throughout this talk today and take from it what you feel you can apply to yourself. So without further ado, we'll jump into it. So the benefits of healthy eating should almost go without saying. As you see here, we've quite a decent list, but it's by no means an exhaustive list. A good quality diet provides us not only with energy, but with the fuel and the vitamins, minerals, nutrients that we need to keep our energy levels high, to ensure that we maintain a healthy, functioning immune system, and to aid in preventing and reducing the risk of illness, especially as we age. So there's a whole pile of benefits to healthy eating, as I said, but we'll try to work and focus on things that we can do today, things that we can action today and pretty easily to try and enhance our diet in some way to make positive long-term changes. So just a little overview of the topics that we're going to discuss today. And as I said, hopefully, my aim here today is to give you, as I said, those actionable takeaways to make it much easier for you to not only just understand some of the nutritional information that is abound, but also, more importantly, how to apply it and how that may impact on your life. So one of the big things that I suppose often gets overlooked, and often I do find that clients and individuals that come to me get caught up in the long grass and the weeds around particular diets and the different, I suppose, restrictive avenues that different diets can bring you down. So they're all well and good, but without taking a good look at the basics, without a good understanding of the basics, then you're building upon a weak foundation. So it is worth pulling yourself back from any diets, any restrictive diets or any very specific diets and meal plans, and focusing in on the basics and ensuring that you understand the basics. I suppose, what are the basics? And as you can see on screen, there's plenty of advancements continuously going on, especially over the past decade. It has really exploded, the nutrition science and nutrition knowledge area. However, the basics still apply. So one of the most important things is to ensure that you focus every day in on having whole fruits and vegetables in your diet. This is one of the biggest areas that gets overlooked, and often we will hear people mention, oh, I know I'm supposed to be having 5 servings of fruit and veg per day. I don't know what a serving is. I don't really, know which fruits or veg to go for, and often people might look for that one or two options, those one or two options, to try and focus in on them. Now, it is worth remembering that variety is key when it comes to our fruit and vegetables. No one fruit or vegetable, and it's the same for any food or food group, can give us all of the nutrients and vitamins and minerals that we need to function and to provide us with a healthy functioning immune system. So it is super important to look at your fruit and vegetables with an idea of trying to include the color of the rainbow. So you're trying to get in as many colors as you possibly can. Again, I'll touch on this later on, but this is one of the major areas that gets overlooked, and from a health perspective, this is so important. We get such a wide variety of vitamins and minerals, as I said, from our fruit and vegetables. Both of which can be used as snacks as well, which I will touch on later on also. Next up, our grains, and we're looking to try to ensure that we follow a whole grain route when it comes to our breads, our cereals, and these type of things. So ensuring that we have a good portion and variety as well of whole grain options in our diet and across our day. So these would be your whole grain breads and pastas, rice, your potatoes, your oats. These are all fantastic options from a complex carbohydrate perspective, but keeping these as a staple in your diet can provide you with slow release energy, plenty of fiber, which is super important as well for our digestive system, as well as giving us as a feeling of satiation for quite a while longer after eating. So try to reduce your more refined grain options, like your white breads and maybe your sugary cereals and these type of things, and maybe few and far between with those would be a good approach. So ensuring that you have a good spread of whole grain options across your day. Next up, we're looking at our protein, and not just the amount of protein, but the quality of protein that we are consuming. It is quite common for people to under intake on protein, and often people think of protein as just your meats as well. However, there are plenty of plant sources of proteins out there that we should be looking to mix into each meal whenever we can, to enhance the not only just the protein content of a meal, but also the variety of it, as we get a whole host of other vitamins and minerals from our plant source foods as well. So things like your lean meats, your poultry, your beans, your lentils, your chickpeas, these are all fantastic protein sources. Your dairy, eggs, these are all fantastic protein sources, but it is important to ensure that we are getting a sufficient amount of protein in across our day. So it is a good idea to take a look at how much you are having, how frequent it is in your diet, how frequent these foods appear in your diet, and assess, is there some room here to make an improvement. Lastly, just on this, I like to touch on dairy, as it gets quite a bad rap in the public domain or in social media circles. Now, dairy, if you have an issue with dairy, when you consume dairy, if you experience some negative issues from that, then that's perfectly fine to reduce that. However, including dairy, if it brings you no issues in your diet, can be fantastic from a whole host of different perspectives. So like I mentioned a while ago, it is a fantastic source of protein, and it also gives us a host of different bacteria, live bacteria, that we don't necessarily get from other food sources, or not as easily from other food sources, as well as being, I suppose, you have your cheeses, your yogurts, your milk. So it allows us to really expand our diet and include different things at different meal times to try, as I said, increase our protein intake, but also increase the flavor of different meals. Dairy is a great and perfectly safe food group to keep in your diet, unless, of course, as I said, you notice that when you consume dairy that you do struggle with some issues around that. Then it might be worth reducing it or removing it. But for the vast majority of people, dairy is perfectly fine to include. So it is important to, as you see here, take advantage of learning opportunities like we're here today to discuss some of the ideas and topics around using this time to optimize your diet. Tuning in to these type of webinars, paying attention to who you follow on social media and where you get your information from, and ensuring that it's from a good source and that it's not an agenda-based source can be very important. These webinars, workshops, demos, these are all fantastic to just keep up to date with the latest knowledge and the latest information. And on that as well, be sure to check in with the HSE website for guidance on dietary intake from one right throughout a lifespan, from the age of 1 right throughout a lifespan. So be sure to check in with the HSE website for the latest guidelines on around those. And to increase your awareness around healthy eating guidelines. So a balanced diet starts with a balanced plate. Now we have a beautiful picture here in front of us of a very colourful meal, and while this may not be how your normal meals look, it doesn't, just because I've presented this here today does not mean you have to make all of your meals match up with this. However, moving in this direction can be a great idea. So variety, and that really is the reason for this picture, is to keep a variety of different fruit and vegetables and complex carbohydrates and protein sources at each of your main meals. So you're trying to steer clear of sticking to just one type of meal each day, or the same meals every day without a whole pile of colour. So what I'm going to talk about here next is the Eat Well Plate Guide, which is a very handy, ready reckoner for seeing whether or not you're having sufficient levels of different nutrients or macronutrients at each one of your main meals, whether you're going overboard or whether you feel you're having a little bit less than what you should be having. Well, the first point here, as we see, is our vegetables. So we should be looking to have somewhere around 1/3 to a half of our plate or bowl made up of fruit or vegetables, or vegetables mostly at our main meals, but our breakfast could be filled up with quite a bit of whole fruit also. After that, then you're looking to ensure you've got a good quality complex carbohydrate whole grain source at each one of your main meals, again, that makes up somewhere in the region of 1/4 to 1/3 of your plate. And these are all going to be dependent on the individual. They're going to be dependent on your exercise, your output, your overall output each day. Some may need a little bit more, some may need a little bit less at each meal. But that's worked out by trial and error over time. And as I said, your oats, your whole grain breads, your rices, your whole grain pastas, wraps, these type of things, your potatoes, these are all fantastic complex carbohydrates to include at each one of your main meals, as I said. Next up, we have our healthy proteins, as I touched on. So we have here we have our chickpeas on screen, but just ensuring again that you have somewhere in the region of 1/4 to 1/3 of your plate or bowl made up of a good quality protein source. Now, this is going to ensure that you are satiated from each meal, as well as providing your body with the level of protein that it needs. So having too little protein at each meal can result in you feeling hungrier sooner than you expected to be. So ensuring that you're having a quarter to a third of your plate, again, depending on your own situation, you may need a little bit more if you're doing a good bit of exercise, you may need a little bit less if you're a little bit more sedentary. So again, trial and error on that. However, it is an area that's often overlooked. So just to keep that in mind, the quality and quantity of your protein intake spread across your day, across your 3 main meals is so important. And lastly then, our fruit. I know I mentioned it at the start, but our fruit is, it can often be overlooked. It can be, some people do use it as a snack, but for a lot of people, they kind of overlook it if it's not part of a breakfast routine, or will load up a smoothie with a lot of fruit. I would suggest just to use fruit to your advantage, especially if you happen to have a little bit of a sweet tooth, or you're that way inclined. Having fruit on hand and available to you, where it's not too hard to go and locate it, can be a great option if you do find that you do regularly reach for a sweet snack. Fruit can be brilliant from that perspective, and much lower in calories than a lot of the more, I suppose, confectionery type snacks we tend to see people reach for. So including that, again, across your day, maybe a little bit post-meal can be very handy. All right. Now, meal patterns. This area is almost completely overlooked. It is growing a little bit, it has grown a little bit during lockdown in public platforms. So it's people speaking about the importance of keeping a schedule, especially while working from home or working from in new, unusual routines and schedules. But regular meal patterns are incredibly important for, number one, providing ourselves with sufficient levels of nutrients and vitamins and minerals across the day. Number two, where we'll notice it the most, is on consistent energy levels throughout our day. So if we happen to eat kind of sporadically without any structure to our diet, we can often find ourselves reaching for snacks or for maybe higher, more calorie dense meals that we wouldn't necessarily go for if we had a good structure in our diet. So it's important, whatever your structure is, that's perfectly fine to you once it's suited to you, and that you're not trying to fit it into, to copy somebody else's structure or schedule. But it is so important to ensure that you have a meal pattern, a regular meal pattern for yourself. That way, if you are low on energy at any point in the day, and if it's a regular occurrence, well, then you can easily take a look at your meals. You know when you eat, and you'll probably have a good idea of what you're eating from an additional meal structure around your meal patterns. So it becomes much easier to highlight gaps or areas that might need a little bit more attention if there is a regular meal pattern. However, without a regular meal pattern, it can be quite tricky to figure out where the gaps are in your diet and where you can possibly look to try and fill those gaps. So keeping consistency, and that's across 7 days of the week. It doesn't mean that you have to eat at 8:01 every single day, but keeping a rough consistency to that meal pattern across your week is super important. As you can see here, we can see to keep our body fueled, but also to stabilize our blood sugars. Now this is done again through ensuring that we have a good quality inclusion of our complex carbohydrates, the likes of the whole grain breads and our oats and all these type of things that I mentioned a while ago, and having them at regular intervals throughout our day, so we maintain a consistent flow of energy from one meal to the next. So as a result of that, we're less likely to need to snack on our hyperpalatable, high-fat, high-sugar foods, which can spike our blood sugar levels up quite rapidly. And like anything that goes up quickly, must come down quite quickly and can leave us feeling quite irritable, can leave us feeling hangry, can result in just lethargy, feelings of fatigue. So it is worth just trying to minimize high sugar, high fat, hyperpalatable snacking in between meals, and ensure that you do keep those complex carbohydrates in a good quantity at each one of your main meals, so that you're keeping a consistent flow of energy from one meal to the next. And this can lastly support our circadian rhythm. By keeping that meal pattern, we reduce the likelihood for late night meals or late night snacking to try to, I suppose, to fill in for any gaps that may be there throughout our day. And one of the reasons for this is that this can, while eating a large meal close to bed isn't necessarily a terrible thing, but it can disrupt your sleep quality, which can have an effect on, which is going to have an effect on your circadian rhythm overall, and your ability to get into deep sleep. If you're filling yourself up with a lot of food close to bed, you're kind of putting an energy source into your body and then trying to switch down, and that can be quite tough to manage. So it is worth keeping a regular meal pattern, as this can help you to keep a good structure to your day, and then if there is any gaps in energy, in hunger or anything like that, it's much easier to look at what your routine is and make changes from there. Often we see with some of the more traditional diets that everything I've spoken about so far happen naturally. So if we take a look at the Mediterranean diet, which gets a lot of publicity for its health benefits, and in the areas around the Mediterranean who follow this Mediterranean diet style, a lot of food is locally sourced. There's a regular meal pattern to how people there eat, and they focus in on good quality fats, good quality complex carbohydrates, local produce, and good quality lean protein sources, including for the likes of oily fish, twice a week where possible. So that's something that we should all be looking for as well, to try and include oily fish at least twice in our week. If we can get in a bit more, then even better. And things like nuts, seeds, legumes as well. These are fantastic from an energy perspective, but also from a protein perspective and a micronutrient perspective. So different things there that the Mediterranean diet, and there's plenty of other traditional diets around the world that have much lower percentages of disease, of different diseases that we see a lot in Western cultures and cultures like our own, where diet tends to be a little bit unstructured and can often be quite poor. So a lot of the benefits to the likes of the Mediterranean diet and other traditional diets around the world are quite similar in that, their approaches are quite similar in that fresh local produce is focused in on, that people look to eat at regular across a regular pattern across the day. The likes of fish, oily fish, it appears in the diet 2 to 3 times per week. So you've good quality fats, you've good quality protein sources, and local source dairy and the likes are all included also. So that it isn't by chance that a lot of these traditional diets have very similar qualities as well as health benefits also. So smart snacks. Now snacking does get a bad rap, and I know I've given it a little bit of a one there a few minutes ago. However, snacking does play an important role in our day-to-day, especially in between meals. But it is important when it comes to snacking, a bit like our meal pattern that I spoke about. it is a good idea to have a plan in around your snacks. So this doesn't have to be a strict plan, but just a general kind of a go-to of a few options that you snack on can be a good idea. Having some form of a loose plan around what you go for will reduce the likelihood of you picking up, say, more convenient type snacks, which are often, as I mentioned, or confectionery type snacks like our biscuits or chocolate or sweets or jellies. These feature quite a lot in snacking routines for people. So what I would be saying is that if this is if that is something that you find with yourself, then to maybe pull back and take a look at why you go for these snacks. If it is, as I said, you have a little bit of a sweet tooth, then maybe looking to include some berries can be a fantastic option there as a switch out. Or things like carrot sticks with some hummus. These type of things can be very handy for changing up from your more calorie dense, high fat, high sugar snacks that tend to feature quite a lot in snacking routines. But snacks can play a major role in keeping our energy levels consistent between meals. If we happen to find that, say, you leave the house at 8 a.m. and you eat just before leaving, but then you don't get to have lunch until 12:30 or 1. Well, that could be quite a long period of time there. So planning in a snack that's going to benefit you, that's going to benefit your own goals and your own targets for some period in between those two can be very beneficial from an energy perspective and from a control of overall calorie perspective as well. So it's worth putting a little bit of thought into your snacks. And if I just jump onto the next slide. So as ever, this is a non-exhaustive list, but these are some very handy snacks to keep in mind. As I said, look, nuts, nut butter, stuff like this, a scrape of nut butter with an oat cake can be a brilliant snack for some people. For more people, it could be a cup of soup or your fruit smoothies, things like this. These are all very handy snacks. But what the main thing that I'm trying to get at here with these is to ensure that you pull yourself aside and take a look at your snacking habits and look to see where you can start to chip away and make some better, more positive changes to these routines and to these choices that you make. So that's, as I said, this is a non-exhaustive snack list, but just to get you thinking that there is quite a large variety of snacking options out there. And often that can be one of the stumbling blocks for people, is just the lack of knowing what to do, what to go for, and what to change up to. So, as I said at the outset, everyone is different, and there is no perfect diet. There's no perfect way of eating that's going to suit everyone. I suppose the big thing here, when you see how to personalize your plan, the first step really is to realize that it's a plan focused for you, taking into account your output, your job, your level of exercise along with that, I suppose maybe how you react to stress, what your overall daily routines are like, and then depending on different deficiencies that everyone may have, diets can often differ in that line. So it can be a good idea to get a professional on board to give a hand with these things. And I know that there's people do look down the route of blood tests and all that, but it can be important to keep in mind your genetic predispositions and family history as well, so which can make it a little bit harder for some people to figure out how to personalize their diet themselves. So in that sense, then it can be a good idea to seek out professionals for help, whether it's activity is low and you're looking to increase it, or whether it's from a dietary perspective that you're deficient in something, or you lack structure or whatnot. Whatever it may be, there's support out there for it, and there are professionals out there willing to, who would be thrilled to come on board and give you a hand. It's so important as well to note, and I know we're here today and we're online, and I'm speaking to you online, but it is worth knowing that all of these professionals are operating the same services that they would have offered in person, online at the moment. So don't feel lost, don't feel like all hope is lost, or that you can't make any change because we're going through COVID lockdown and stuff like that. There's still time and opportunity to make positive changes. So just reaching out to whichever area, if it's exercise, reaching out to your health coaches, your personal trainers for guidance on what kind of exercise to be going after. And if it's diet related, reaching out to your dietitians and your nutritionists for guidance on those as well. Now this slide can be is a very important one. So when it comes to setting goals and targets, it's so important to make it SMART. Now, SMART is an acronym for making sure that your diet is specific, that it's, and any changes, not just diet, but any goals or targets or changes you're looking to make, that it's specific, which is specific to you, that it is measurable, that you have a start point and you know what, and you're going to be able to measure from that start point to your goal, that it's an achievable goal. So not setting yourself a target that is too far out of your reach. Say for me, there's no point in me setting a goal or target that I want to be competing in Tokyo Olympics next year. It's not going to happen. So it's about making those targets achievable as well, and keeping that in mind. Making sure that they're relevant to you, the lifestyle that you want to live, the person you are, the things that you're interested in, and the lifestyle you want to live. This is so super important. And often I do see clients trying to force themselves to doing something or into a goal or target that doesn't line up with who they are as a person, and they find it very hard to stick to. So making sure that you are keeping things relevant to you and that you apply a time frame to it, so that you have a start point and a finish point, and keep this nice and long. You don't want to have too tight of a time frame where you're trying to make big changes to long-term goals and targets. So setting yourself from a start date and a goal date to have achieved your goals or targets as well is so important. And as I said, if you do struggle with any of this, then do reach out for support with any of the professions that I spoke about on the last slide. So just before you jump into making changes, and this is something during lockdown that I experienced myself, that it can be such an enticement into your kitchen, especially if cooking and preparing meals is a struggle for you, to make a change and to actually purchase pots, pans, knives that just spruce up your kitchen a little bit, clearing out your fridges and your shelves of foods that don't necessarily line up with what your own goals are, and then doing your best to have them not come back into the house is so important. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that if you've got a shelf full of sweets and stuff that you better go home and eat it all. Feel free to give it out to people, give it to friends or family if you feel the need to. But just ensuring that you can start afresh and really enhance the enjoyment factor of being in your kitchen by, say, upgrading the likes of your appliances, your knives, your pots and pans. This can really bring about a little bit of pride when it comes to preparing meals and helping you to create that meal pattern and meal structure that we spoke about. So just I'll just leave this here for a second or two. So just bulk items that you can have in your home that are easy to have on hand, whether it's to create a snack, whether it is to just create random meals. And this is often, I find just with this slide, there's a great website called Yummly, that if you find that you're unsure of what to make with the food that you have in your press or in your fridge, you can't really think of a recipe, well, just go on to Yummly and you can just pop in what you have in your fridge and your press, and it will shoot back a number of different recipes to you. So this can be a fantastic resource for people who struggle to figure out what to focus in on, or what kind of meals to make. This is, I suppose, one of the main slides that I'm going to speak about today, and we're coming towards the end. But your mindset is so important. Addressing your mindset and paying attention to how you interact with food, how food interacts with you. So do you eat? Do you find that you snack quite a lot, or do you find that you don't eat for large portions of your day due to pressures from work or lifestyle and have to eat a lot at night? Or do you find that you over-consume during the day or under-consume, depending on the person? What is your relationship with food, and how does your mindset focus in with that as well? How do you think about food? How do you think about your diet, your lifestyle, your activity? And then with that, how do you react to those thoughts? Do you react in a positive manner that's going to help you achieve your goals and targets? Or do you find that maybe you struggle a little bit with things? So as you can see here, our thoughts affect our emotions affect our behaviors, including our eating behavior. So it is super important to keep that in mind. And lastly, the most important point on this slide is to avoid negative self-talk. There's no benefit to having a negative conversation with yourself because of something you've eaten. Enjoy what you've eaten, enjoy food you like to eat, and then move, if it happens to be off of what your goal is or off of what your plan is, just enjoy it, enjoy that it happened, and then move on and get back onto where you left off again. So negative self-talk doesn't serve us in any kind of a positive way, naturally enough. Reconnecting with our food system. So it's very short, little run through here. Just again, more time preparing homemade meals. This can be super important. Building up a repertoire of foods and meals that we get used to making and that we enjoy making can be super important and can really help us to build variety into our diet. So building up a good relationship there with in your kitchen, as I said, and preparing homemade meals and the likes can be very beneficial going forward. And the big thing, really, when it comes to this slide, on top of everything that we've touched on throughout today, is to just be consistent, and that's across 7 days of the week. Keep structure in your day. Keep a consistency to the route or path that you've chosen to go on. So that can be incredibly important for things like activity and being active and exercising, and just keeping a consistency around that, or keeping a consistency around your meal pattern, around the structure of your meal, so that you're getting sufficient energy from each meal and that you're filling yourself sufficiently from each meal. This is super important. So consistency across all areas of lifestyle, diet and activity is so important. Just some very quick tips then for eating well at home. As I said, building a repertoire of quick, easy, simple meals is so important. Loading up on your veggies and your fruit for fiber, energy and vitamins and minerals. It can be a great idea if you have a young family at home to get children involved in cooking, because this gives you a super opportunity to educate them on the importance of diet, educate them on the importance of different foods in their diet and what these foods provide them with. And this can be a fun thing to do also, and can, especially for children who maybe have aversions to food or to different meals, that getting them involved, getting their hands involved in the making of a meal can really entice them into trying out new foods or trying out different foods that they may have created a kind of a block to in their mind. So that as well as everything else there. So just addressing your stress and negative emotions. So it's important to keep in mind, as I said, with your mindset, this is a very stressful time for many people, and we've lost our normal social structures, our normal routines, and we're a little bit out of whack overall. So it is important to just keep in mind that we are all going through a very unusual time and a very stressful time, and to ensure that we don't turn to food as a crutch on this can be an important point to note. If this is something that you do struggle with, then as I mentioned, reaching out to a professional can be an important step and can be a really beneficial step. Reaching out to a mental health coach if it's, if you feel like you do reach for food all the time, that's something you struggle with when you're stressed, can be beneficial, or a dietitian or nutritionist as well. The help and support is there and is available. These professionals can help you to put all of the stress management plans and decisions around food and routines around food and diet in place as well. And it's so important to just find what works for you. I know I touched on it at the beginning and throughout the talk today, but I do have to stress it. Enjoy the food you eat and find what works for you from a routine perspective and an overall diet, lifestyle and activity perspective. So there's plenty of things there that our nutrition can help us with, things like L-theanine there to help us relax and de-stress, to balance our blood sugars and support neurotransmitters by including complex carbohydrates, like I've mentioned many times here today. Probiotics can be very beneficial for our gut health. There's a whole host of things. This is by no means an exhaustive list either, but our diet influences so many things for us, from how we deal with stress, how we react to stress, and how we manage it overall. So it's worth putting a good focus and a good bit of attention into your diet, and after a while that will become routine for you. So in summary, so just keep learning. Keep looking out for days like today. Keep looking out for different seminars, workshops, and different things for upgrading your knowledge and keeping up to date with the latest guidelines, healthy eating guidelines. And as I said, giving a look onto the HSE website is a great option for keeping up to date with the different recommendations on intake from age 1 right throughout your lifespan. So that can be a great resource there to check in with, or the Eat Well Plate Guide as well for helping you to structure your meals can be great. So these are all the things we touch on today, and it's lastly on this one, just to create a supportive network around you of friends, family, colleagues, people who are genuinely interested in helping you to achieve your goals and make the changes that you're looking to make long term. Without this, it can be very tough to make changes. So this could be in the form of a nutritionist or dietitian, or as I said, it could be your friends, family, colleagues. A strong support network is so important when it comes to making change and achieving long-term goals and targets as well. Okay, so we're going to jump into a Q&A, which I may have forgotten to mention at the outset, so my apologies for that. I'll just see if I have any questions come in here. Okay, so the first question, do I need to count calories every day? The answer is no, you shouldn't need to at all. It will depend on the person, depend on the person's goals, what you're trying to achieve long term. But counting calories every day, when I work with clients, if we do go down the calorie counting route, it is for a short period of time to try and learn what is in different foods from a calorie perspective, or what the protein content of different foods are, maybe to get a realization of the amount of overall calories that my client is having. So in a normal setting, but counting calories long term is not something I would promote. No, but I would say that if you're trying to make a change, just to take note of what your portion sizes are like. Take note of what calories you're looking to be in around, depending on your goal and depending on your output and all that. So it can be beneficial for some people in the short term, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's something that everyone needs to pay attention to. So I have been trying, I try to keep my carbohydrate to 20 to 30% of my diet. Is that a good measure? I have been doing well and using an app to keep tabs on my numbers. Normally, we do suggest that carbohydrate intake is up in the anywhere from 40 to 60% of your overall intake each day. Again, depending on the individual, depending on the individual's output. Do you exercise? I suppose, and I don't mean to kind of to not answer you directly, but without any other information, without knowing what your overall output is or anything like that, I can't really comment. However, 20 to 30% would be kind of on the low side of things, and it is worth remembering, and often carbohydrate gets demonized over protein and fat, in that people do feel like that by consuming carbohydrates we gain body fat. This is simply untrue. So carbohydrate has 4 calories per gram, protein has 4 calories per gram, and fat has 9 calories per gram. So if we're going to put on body fat or gain weight in general, then we have to be in a calorie surplus. So we have to be eating more than what our body requires to maintain normal everyday functions. Calorie maintenance will keep you at the same way you are at the moment. And then if you're trying to lose weight, you're looking to be in a calorie deficit overall. So you can pull back on carbohydrate a bit, you can pull back on protein a bit, you can pull back on fat a bit, but it's going to be very individual to the person, your training or your lifestyle, and your overall output. So there's a lot of moving parts there, so I couldn't give a very specific answer on that, but that's just a little bit of background on our macronutrients there. Useful websites for understanding food labels. There's quite a lot out there. There's none that I would specifically say go to this one, but keeping an eye on, as I mentioned, the likes of the HSE website, on food portion sizes, on the amount of different foods that we're supposed to be having in our diet, and there's quite a sufficient amount of information on what we should be looking to control in our diet on the HSE website. So it's worth giving a look at that and then taking a look at food labels afterwards to kind of see, right, well, this is what is in that. And things to be looking out for when you are looking at food labels is to just ensure that it's not that you're not consuming a lot of saturated fat or high salt foods. So that they'd be the big things to kind of look out for there. But it depends on what you're having and what your overall diet is like. So refer back to the HSE website and give a look at that and try to work out what it is you're looking to have in your diet day to day, and then try to keep that in mind when you are reviewing food labels. All right, so that's all of it. They're all of our questions. So I would just like to thank you all for being here today and for tuning in today, and take this opportunity to remind you that the Laya Wellness live events are going to be continuing on over the next few weeks with some brilliant content and some brilliant speakers still to come. So be sure to check out the website and follow the link that'll be shown on screen to see what else is coming up over the coming weeks. And I'd like to thank you all again for being here today and for listening to me yabber on for a while, and I hope to speak with you all again soon. Thank you.